If you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I'm a big proponent of melting down RRSPs in retirement, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense to do so. I received the following email from an individual that we'll call Ryan. He says, "Hey Mark, I just came across your channel and I love what you're doing in terms of withdrawal strategies in retirement. I've never had these types of discussions with my advisor. I watched your video on 3 reasons to melt down your RSPs aggressively, and I wasn't aware that my estate would be paying so much tax. I'm 65 and don't need any income from my RSP. If I assume a 6% rate of return on my portfolio and only take out the minimum amount from my RIF when I'm forced to make the conversion, I will still have close to 1.8 million exposed to tax when I'm 85. Should I be making RSP withdrawals today while I'm in a lower bracket? Here are a few details. I live in Manitoba. I sold the business a few years ago and I'm now fully retired. My income is $180,000 per year and I don't foresee it going down. My TFSA is max and I top it off every year from my cash flow. Today my RSP is worth $1.3 million. Any guidance is appreciated." Ryan is right. If he doesn't make any withdrawals from his RSPs and then only takes out the minimum amount once it's in a RIF, he will have just under $1.8 million once he's 85 years old. So, should he be making extra withdrawals from his RSPs today while he's in a lower tax bracket? By looking at the combined Manitoba and federal tax brackets, we can see that Ryan's income of $180,000 puts him in the 46.4% tax bracket. So there's room to make a withdrawal of $66,000 from his RSPs for him to remain under that 50% bracket. Let's say that he did this. So after paying tax, again at just over 46%, he would be left with $35,000. Now, if he lets that $35,000 grow over the next 20 years at, say, 6%, he would have $120,000 by the time he's 85. Alternatively, if he leaves the $66,000 in his registered account and lets it grow for 20 years at 6%, it's going to be worth $244,000 by the time he's 85. But he's going to be in the highest marginal tax rate, so after factoring in his tax bill, he's going to be left with $111,000. So in this scenario, it looks like the non-registered account is better, but there's one factor that we're missing: taxes. In his non-registered account, the 6% that he earns annually will not be tax-free. He will need to pay tax on any interest, dividends, or capital gains that he triggers. So let's just say that after paying the taxes, his net return in his non-registered account is 5%. Now, the $35,000 that he's left with after making the withdrawal from his RSP is only going to grow to $98,000 over the next 20 years if we're using a net rate of return of 5% after factoring in the yearly taxes. In this case, Ryan is better off paying over 50% tax in the future compared to paying 46% today. The RSP meltdown strategy only makes sense if you're able to withdraw funds at a considerably lower rate than you will in the future. As frustrating as RRSPs are, you are taking advantage of tax-free growth in the account while you're still alive. So does Ryan have any options, or is he stuck in this predicament because of his high income? This is where tax planning meets investment management. Ryan mentioned that he's expecting a rate of return of 6% in his portfolio. And let's just say, for the sake of this example, that half of his portfolio is invested in the stock market and the other half of his portfolio is invested in more conservative investments. Let's say that the stock portion, again, of his portfolio earns 8% per year and the conservative portion of his portfolio grows at 4% per year, then combined, that's where we're getting that 6% rate of return. As we saw in our previous example, it didn't make sense for Ryan to draw funds out of his RSPs, even though he was in a lower tax bracket today, because his net rate of return in his non-registered account after factoring in his yearly taxes was lower than what he was earning tax-free in his RSP in the meantime. To flip this on its head, Ryan could still make that same withdrawal from his RSP. Again, he'd have $35,000 to invest in his non-registered account, but this time we only invest that $35,000 in the stock portion of his portfolio. Again, that's growing at 8% per year. And to keep his account balanced at 50-50, he could make his RSPs a little bit more conservative to keep the entire portfolio, again, at that even split. In a situation like this, the math will now say that it's beneficial to draw down on the RSPs. If you're looking for more tax withdrawal strategies, check us out at transcanadawealthmanagement.com.